Well. It's Friday. Welcome to Sin City Crypto. My name's Big Rob. Today, just me and Forrest. No David, but this show is packed full of information, full of all the juicy news, and we package that thing up in a fun and sexy way, not stale like the other channels. Today, a lot on the docket. There's a giant industry that is picking up Bitcoin. Giant Bitcoin news coming in. It's a big one. Solana. Well, might be my favorite layer one in the game. And who did it replace? Well, Ethereum. So we're going to talk today about why I'm not so bullish on Ethereum and why I'm hyper bullish on Solana. Also, the economy's in the dumps. Inflation is around the corner. Well, worse inflation is around the corner. PCE numbers are in. They're not looking good. What does that mean for the investments of crypto and Bitcoin? And then lastly, the Bitcoin mining as well. Well, post-halving, rewards are down. What does that mean for the miners? We're going to get into that and here in a moment on the other end of this intro. Hola! Join with me and Forrest today. David's got the day off. And so if you're wondering, David's the one that trades. You might be wondering to yourself, why does David have the day off? Well, David got liquidated. Watch David on the show here. You know that, he got liquidated on his vape. And so if you ever seen him in the background puffing that cloud, his vape got liquidated here. So he's not here today. So, Forrest, how are you doing, man? Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's always a pleasure. Just struggling with allergy season. It's been going on for like a month straight now. Just struggling out here.
Dude, you would think here in Vegas, allergies wouldn't be that strong because there's not as much greenery. Originally from Virginia before I moved out here, and allergies just beat me down. And I had a conversation. We're gonna get into some allergy news here. I had a conversation with a doctor, and I was like, "Doc, man, why do I got allergies in the desert?" And he said that the desert plants have finer pollen, and they dump more pollen because the plants are spaced further apart. So for one cactus to pollinate another one, a quarter mile away, it's gotta dump a lot of pollen. So there you go. So if you come to Vegas, bring the allergy pills.
Will do. As worried as the chemtrails out there, dumping it. The airplane's dumping it.
Yeah, man. I wonder if that's a real thing. Oh, so speaking of dumping, you have Bitcoin taking a little bit of a downturn this week. And so if you take a look, Bitcoin's at 64,000, did briefly touch 65,000 this week, or 66,000 this week, and crossed above 65. But this area all week is 64,000, 63,000. This has been a big area of resistance as of lately. But I wanted to get into our first big headline news when it comes into Bitcoin. And there's an industry or and especially particularly an institution that is making headline news here, and it's BNY Mellon. So BNY Mellon, the world's largest bank custodian, has Bitcoin exposure through the ETFs, through BlackRock, and through Grayscale. And so this has been revealed through their public filings. And this is something I think we're going to see more of, right? And this big inflows that we had on the ETFs, where all of a sudden hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars were flowing into the ETFs, and they had to in turn go out and buy Bitcoin. Well, there was a customer on the back end, or customers, and these are familiar names, especially names that have historically in the past been, opposing Bitcoin and have mocked Bitcoin and said that, hey, like, it's a scam, it's a Ponzi. And so now these large institutions that have historically been against Bitcoin, well, little by little, they're discovering that they hold Bitcoin. I think this is something that we're going to see more of, not just with one bank, but in the same narrative that we have that banks hold a portfolio of assets, gold and commodities included. I think that is going to be a normal mainstay to have Bitcoin as part of a company's portfolio, especially in banking if you have ties to finance. Forrest, what do you think about BNY Mellon, largest bank custodian globally, custodying Bitcoin through these ETFs? Are you surprised, or do you think that this is one of many? What's your takeaway?
Yeah, I think we'll see this trend continue to pick up. I think it's obviously not bullish because they're buying Bitcoin. I don't know what their plans are as far as if they're looking at it as just a long-term hold, what it is from that perspective. But you look at a lot of these banks and how terribly down bad they are. So I saw a chart, and maybe I'll be able to find it, but it was like the unrealized losses from banks holding debt, U.S. debt, treasuries, particularly long-term treasuries that are down horrendously since the post-COVID peaks of that debt. And you look at all these unrealized losses that they have holding U.S. treasuries. It's like they got to hedge with something. They can't just ignore a very rapidly fast-growing asset class. And I don't expect BNY Mellon and all these other banks to take massive, huge Bitcoin positions and move, 20% of their capital or assets under management into Bitcoin. But it seems like it's, too large of an asset class for them to ignore and not at least have a little bit and maybe offset some of the downside volatility that they're seeing in U.S. debt and treasuries for the time being.
Yeah.
Anything they can do to kind of offset that, I'm sure is, that they're looking into.
My big takeaway, you mentioned there is, a hedge against the dollar, right? And BNY Mellon is more of an international bank, something that's European bank realistically, and so we see that, hey, maybe this is, as you mentioned, the banks internationally stepping away from such a heavy exposure to the dollar. And if you're trying to get a hedge against the dollar, or at least diversify to an uncorrelated asset that isn't correlated to, say, the stock market in the U.S. and the treasury market and the dollar, where else are you really going to go? I mean, these markets are so intertwined that there's not a lot of assets out there. I think you have to look at commodities. And then if you're going to diversify in commodities, are you going to go 100% all in gold? No, especially not when you're dealing in billions or even trillions of dollars. And so a position on Bitcoin seems to make sense, not to mention that, there is tech behind it. It's not just simply a store of value. There is, other use cases for Bitcoin. I think the store value is the strongest, but I think you can make a case for multiple reasons on why you would hold Bitcoin outside of just trying to get a hedge against the dollar or protect against inflation. I do want to, you mentioned treasuries. We did get some big numbers in recently from the PCIe, and so that came in today. And so Fed's preferred inflation measure, the PCE, is higher than expected. So what was supposed to come in at 2.6, 2.7, and then the core, which is the number that really matters the most, came in at 2.8. So that was 0.2 higher than expected as well. And so it draws into question. We're expecting the interest rate cuts, several of them to come in this year, especially after the last press meeting from Jerome Powell, where he said that, expecting some rate cuts, and which we saw the markets particularly the stock markets, turn bullish on that news. We are in an election year, and we're expecting that, hey, let's ease the interest rates and spur economic activity, and that would bode well for the incumbent president, which is to be expected. However, on the contrary, you have inflation going up. So does this number cause the Fed to perhaps put a brakes on that plan? Because I have a feeling that Biden and the administration, looking for re-election, is going to pressure the Fed into cutting rates. And not to mention, the Fed said that they were looking to cut rates or to lower or ease the interest rates. So we're kind of in an impasse now, and we're looking at this information coming in. We're trying to analyze, like, what are we going to do here, right? And so, I'll send it to you, Forrest. What is your? I know this isn't neither one of our areas of expertise, but there is a correlation, particularly in Bitcoin and their price movement, when there is rate hikes. And we saw that the rate cuts essentially spurred at that right when we cut rates, spurred the last bull market in 2021. Do you think that, well, one, we'll get a rate cut? If we do you think that that'll kick off the next bull market, or do you think that'll spur some massive price movement? Because the liquidity's there, through the ETFs. We've plugged in the largest market in the world, the New York Stock Exchange. And, well, I think the only thing holding it back, in my opinion, is the interest rates, right?
Yeah. So the next rate decision, the next CME meeting, I believe, is in 4 days on the 1st of the month, 1st of May. And right now there's like a 2.9% chance priced in of a rate cut. So I don't think it's likely we get a rate cut in May, but then in June, the rate cut futures are pricing in an 11.3% chance of a rate cut in June. So a pretty low chance of a rate cut in June. I actually think the chances are higher than 11.3%. And the reason being is because the market's making that decision based off of the latest CPI or PCE print, the latest data about around inflation. But if you look at real-time inflation on a dashboard like Trueflation, you actually see that it kind of it tracked this huge, it predicted this large spike in Trueflation. Is just like, different, they use different methods of gathering data on inflation, and it's just more real time rather than PCE, which is lagged by about a month. So Trueflation is actually showing inflation moving back down aggressively in the month of April. And we get those April numbers come like May 15th or so. So if those April numbers come in really low on May 15th, I actually think that we're more likely to see a rate cut maybe in June than what the market's actually pricing in, which could be bullish. Could be a reason for the market to speculate a little bit. If we see inflation numbers coming back down, Fed tosses in a 25 bit, like at the end of the day, a 25 basis point rate hike, I don't think is going to make much of a difference either way. I mean, if rates are still above 5%, I think at the end of the day, like tossing in a rate cut in June could be, a posturing thing. Hey, we got inflation under control. It's, moving in the right direction. And then they can leave rates at 5% for a while if they want to. But it just helps them posture into the election and posture into the rest of the year. But yeah, I do think that inflation will probably come back down next month to a large degree based on what I'm seeing on Trueflation.
Well, I'm also, one thing that we also take into account for here, well, one, we've discussed multiple times that, hey, it's an election year, probably see some rate cuts, but what happens when the election actually finishes, right? And let's just say that Trump were to get elected, which I think that, some polls, take the poll data for what you want. The last two elections have been grossly misread. But if Trump were to get elected as the president again, he has been pretty vocal on lowering the interest rates almost down to zero. And, some news that came out from his team here, we've seen that so Trump's team wants to restructure the Federal Reserve. And so he's trying to almost form a coup, I guess, and redo and remove the power from the Fed chair and bring it into the executive office. And so this would include allowing the president to have a direct say on interest rate decisions. It would also allow him to get rid of Fed Chair Jerome Powell before his term ends in 2026. And he's been pretty vocal on lowering his interest rates, and he has been an opposition to Jerome Powell, which is funny because he put Jerome Powell in it. He elected him, but has had conflict on his decisions repeatedly. And so this is interesting, right? And what would happen if Trump got elected? And I do think that the rate cuts would almost happen immediately. And then not to mention, he's coming out here and saying, hey, we're going to restructure this whole Fed thing. And I want to have control of interest rates, or at least have a influence or decision on, if we're going to raise or cut rates. And I do think that with his stance, he's been very vocal on let's cut rates. So something interesting to keep an eye out. Also, if we're going to on the topic of inflation, Japan has had some pretty significant inflation, and Japan's purchasing power is down 4%. Not this year, not this quarter, but in the last 3 weeks. You can see here that 4% of purchasing power gone. And so this is a direct effect of inflation. And then, is this something we could see here in the United States? Maybe. And also, I did find this video on Ray Dalio. And so this is, how to tell if your currency is collapsing. And some interesting takeaways. I've found a lot of parallels to what I saw in Terra Luna to what you had here. Terra Luna was an inflation of its base token because of its correlation to its algorithmic stablecoin, and it was all a cause and effect of selling. So here, Ray Dalio, let's just watch this, and it's a minute long.
Indicators of when a fiat currency is going to decline into a collapse is when those who are holding its debt sell the debt, and the government, central bank, has to print money to buy that debt in large size while that's going down. Those are the most important indicators, so that you can see it. Again, I want to repeat, selling the debt so that there's a big supply-demand imbalance, and the central bank having to come in there and buy the debt that no one else will buy in large quantity, so that then there's a currency devaluation. You have those three things aligned, the currency devaluation going down at the same time as those other two things are happening. And that's been a classic. It's like a bank run. They come to the bank, there's not enough money in the bank, and so they have to make up the difference by the printing of money.
And I don't know why, but that just brings a stark reminder of what happened with Terra Luna. I'm so plugged into the crypto space, and I hear about this. I'm like, wow, what happens if you start selling U.S. debt in the form of treasuries? Let's say nations are just offloading, and there's no buyers on the other end. We've seen these treasury auctions have some very disappointing numbers. And what happens if there's no buyers there on the other end? Well, the treasury has to, in turn, buy it themselves, right? They have to buy them back through printing. And that would, in turn, accelerate inflation, which if you accelerate inflation, you get hyperinflation, you're going to get more countries or more debt holders of treasuries saying, hey, this asset that I'm holding that's supposed to pay out over 10 years, it's it's losing value. I gotta offload it because at this rate, I'm gonna be underwater or negative on my treasuries. And in turn, they keep selling, and it's a spiral, right? A debt spiral. And I think that's the direction we're headed. Stark reminder there from Ray Dalio. And Forrest, what do you think about kind of the economic landscape? I know that you mentioned that you think that rate cuts are coming, but if the rate cuts do come, would see a little tick up in inflation. One of our financial partners, Japan, seeing some gross numbers recently. And is this a concern for you, or is this bullish for crypto? What do you think?
I think this is I think this is going to take like the next year to maybe 3 years to play out, but I think it's extraordinarily bearish for everything except for gold, silver, and maybe in the long term Bitcoin. But I don't want to get married to that idea because Bitcoin historically has traded like a risk asset, and I think that's a trap that a lot of people may fall into. I think the best thing to do is to trade the Bitcoin market cycles, where look, you don't want to be caught. Inflation or not, you don't want to be caught, in the downtrend section of a Bitcoin bear market. If you have a very long time horizon, 10, 20, 30 years, sure, hodl, right? No big deal there. But I think I'm personally just extraordinarily bullish on gold and silver, which is not something you would have heard me say, 1, 2, or even 3 years ago. I think gold is going to see multiples over the next few years, like 3, 4, 5x. Same thing with silver. Essentially what's happening is exactly what Ray Dalio just mentioned. Now, I am kind of bullish in like this near term going into the election. I think we're kind of carving out a top in a lot of risk assets over the next year, maybe 6 to 12 months. But going into 2025 post-election, I really don't want to be in risk assets at all. But yeah, it's exactly what Ray Dalio mentioned. China and a bunch of BRICS countries own a ridiculous amount of U.S. debt. We don't have any buyers for any of the new debt that we issue, as you mentioned from the disappointing auctions. China is loading up on gold. They are telling their citizens, they're instructing their citizens to load up on gold and silver. And when they decide to continue to sell off this U.S. debt, there's going to be no buyers. Yields are going to continue to skyrocket on these long-term bonds. They're going to continue to fall in price, and the U.S. government's going to have to step in to buy it back. When you see the headline, when we've already seen this, there's already going on. But when you start to see Treasury buyback programs, that is not good for the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. I think there's a few like the two things really that you can do to curb inflation is one, to get energy prices super low, which I do think that if Trump's elected, then and again, I try not to stay political, just historically, under conservative leadership, we usually have cheaper energy prices because of like the whole fossil fuel, green energy debate or whatever, or for the government to stop spending money. And we've been spending money and printing money like crazy, sending it overseas to fight in proxy wars, which is insane to me. Again, I won't get too political, but if we continue to see high energy prices, which the oil chart looks super bullish. I think oil is probably going back up. If we see high energy prices and reckless government spending, it's really difficult to put this genie back in the bottle. So yeah, I think we're going to get to a point where people are melting down their jewelry to pay rent. And I know that sounds very dire and alarmist, but I just don't see how this gets turned around, regardless of who's elected. I don't think there's a leader or a candidate that can turn this thing around and prevent the amount of printing that we've seen go on and get energy prices to a point where GDP can soar again. So yeah, I'm bullish gold and silver, and I think it's smart to own some Bitcoin and crypto in there as well, especially post-halving. I think this is a really good opportunity to make some money in this year in crypto, post Bitcoin halving, before we see further economic decline or loss of purchasing power. So not to be so doomsday, but
the writing's on the wall.
Seriously.
The writing's on the wall. It's not like it's some kooky theory you're drawing up there. I mean, we just we just printed $60 billion, or we just basically sent $60 billion abroad, and we just, with the stroke of a pen, and that money has to come from somewhere, and they're probably not going to generate that from tax revenue. And so just printed that money out of thin air. And then on top of that, we're weaponizing the dollar. And so, the incentive to even hold dollars and transact in dollars and use it as the liquidity for global market trade is drying up because, well, the U.S. is, weaponizing the dollar. And so we saw that we dropped new sanctions this week or yesterday on Iran for their involvement in the drone attack on Israel. Won't go too far. Won't go any depth in there, but it's very. How do you expect the globe to use the dollar if any conflict pops up that goes against the interests of the U.S.? You basically just cut everyone off of the dollar, as well. They're going to go out and find other ways of trading other currencies to transact. And even then, like, why would you even buy a treasury if you're a foreign country, if you're afraid of sanctions and seizures and forfeitures, right? And so that's the world we live in. I do want to get into some Bitcoin chart and also Solana chart here in a moment. I'm gonna cue it over to you here in a second, Forrest, if you want to get those pulled up. We're going to start with Bitcoin. We're going to look at a Solana chart, and we've got some Solana news coming up after that as well. And so what is going on in the Solana ecosystem? Why am I so bullish on it? Well, there's no shortage of news coming out of the Solana camp. Outside of their transactions being a little bogged down, things taking a little longer to settle. Outside of that, historically, everything is pointing it into the right direction for Solana. But before we do, I do want to give a shout out to our channel sponsors, Legacy. Now, big thank you to Legacy Network for sponsoring today's show. Legacy is bringing two important components: personal development and making money. Join the Legacy Network Telegram to stay up to date and be one of the first people to download the Academy app once it goes live. Telegram link in the description. And so with that said, I'm going to send it over to you, Forrest. What is the Bitcoin chart looking like? And 70,000, is that in the cards? Because that was what I thought we were going to get to post-halving. I haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah, let me share my screen here. So we've got the Bitcoin chart right here. So the main thing that I'm paying attention to with Bitcoin is a couple of things. One is it's like we just had the halving. And obviously that reduces the supply of Bitcoin coming onto the market. A lot of that has been offset, and I think you have an article on this in a little bit, has been offset by like all these fees that miners are getting, from ordinals and runes and, these meme coins on Bitcoin. So we really haven't seen like the effects of the halving kick in, or I don't think we'll see it kick in for a little bit, because Bitcoin, their miners are still getting, the same amount or even more Bitcoin than they were for processing these transactions in the past before the halving. So I think once you see Bitcoin meme coins kind of die down a bit, we'll see that halving effect take place in the chart. But I've just got kind of two time frames that I'm paying attention to. And this first is, 60 days out from this kind of, consolidation forming. And then the second is 90 days. And that's because for most of this recent market, price action, the longest periods of consolidation we've really seen have been about 60 days. So we've been consolidating now for about 60 days between $59,000, $60,000 and the highs here at $72,000, $73,000. As of right now, I think it's very straightforward, right? I think it's an annoying, choppy market, but it's a very straightforward market. We are currently sitting in a bull flag for Bitcoin, which is a bullish pattern. Now, not every bull flag is going to result in continuation, but it's a bullish pattern. There's no reason, in my opinion, from a technical analysis perspective, at this exact moment in time, to be worried about the downside. There's no reason until we cross below $59,000 to be worried about downside. Now, I did talk about de-risking if we saw this kind of symmetric triangle break, which we did, and now we've gotten rejected from a retest. And it was unfortunate because altcoins kind of front ran that Bitcoin sell-off, which is what it is, just makes it difficult to de-risk. Once we break there, if altcoins have already been crashing before Bitcoin has. So Bitcoin's been showing a lot of strength while altcoins have been a little bit weaker. But I've kind of got this green box highlighted as a region that I'm just paying attention to a breakout on either side, right? I want to pay attention to where in the next, week or two or maybe in the next, couple of weeks, where does Bitcoin, directionally decide to go? Below 59K. And I don't mean just like a quick wick below 59K. If we drop down and run this wick over here, the 59K level, and it stays down there for like an hour or less, and it just pops right back up above, that's fine. That's fine. That's what we see wicks come down here. We see price get run all the time. These lows get run, and we see the demand come in and push us back up. You don't want to get faked out. But if we start closing 4-hour candles, 12-hour candles, daily candles below 59K, I think we're going to probably take a trip down to 49.50K. If not, there's a little bit of support at 55K. Alternatively, though, I'm just going to be bullish until that happens. I'm not going to sit and try to be in the camp of, hey, everything, this is the base case. It's not the base case for me. We're post-halving. We have a lot of tailwinds. The macro situation is not the best it's ever been. Sure, the stocks don't look the best that they ever have. Sure, but we're not tanking quite yet. And if we do, we can cut risk here and we can look for short opportunities. But otherwise, I expect some bullish opportunities here. And my base case is continuation upwards as it has been. We've just been sitting in a bullish pattern, and until we break that to the downside, I'm not going to get too bearish. Just think, keeping it simple here.
I know you mentioned the 60-day consolidation period that we've seen historically, and it's been going back quite some time, not just in recent days as well. And so are we primed for a breakout? I just look at the fact that, hey, we just went through the halving, a massive event, one of the largest events there is in crypto, the biggest event in Bitcoin, essentially. And, well, price is still held strong, not to mention that we have the ETFs, which have been, maybe taking a little breather right now, but the news is out there. And I know you said you don't want to sound too bearish. I'm bearish on monetary system here in the United States, inflation. And, well, crypto is a remedy to the evils of politics and what they do to manipulate our currency and debase it, right? And so commodities essentially is the savior to what we're seeing right now at the gas pumps, where the prices are have doubled in the last few years, and the prices of houses have doubled since 2020. And so these are all indicators of a flawed monetary system or a fiat currency. And there's only one protection, and it's commodities, right? Things that have a somewhat set or scarce value, like gold, something that just can't be created out of thin air, collectibles, gold, precious metals, energy, particularly like oil, for example, and also Bitcoin and cryptos. And so for me, even though the horizon might look grim and bleak for the dollar or for governments or for just the thesis behind fiat currency, well, Bitcoin is something that will stand out. Now, you did mention the Bitcoin post-halving, Bitcoin miner revenue is holding pretty steady. So historically, we've seen post-halving the miners having to turn off ASICs because some of them are unprofitable. We've seen that it has a negative price effect on Bitcoin immediately after the halving. Obviously, we know that what happens about 6 to 8 months after halving, that's when you really start getting into the bull run. But immediately, it does cause some issues for the hash rate. It causes some issues for the miners' profitability, also for the ASICs. Well, in step ordinals. Ordinals have caused a massive surge in transaction fees. Right now, sitting around 20% of the revenue from the miners are coming from these transaction fees, which is a far cry from where it was just a few years ago prior to the BRC20 and ordinals. And so also taking a look, one of the largest mining companies, Marathon Digital's hash rate is pulling ahead of expectations a week after the halving. And so I won't go into detail into this article, but Marathon has not only held up its hash rate, but is now acquiring more ASICs instead of buttoning down the hatches and preparing for a loss in revenue and having to adjust your business model to limp by because, well, the profits got cut in half from your Bitcoin rewards. We're not seeing that. Hash rate is held strong with Marathon, and also they're pulling the trigger on buying more ASICs. And so for Bitcoin, the network is looking extremely strong. And now I want to segue, and I know I prompted you to pull up a Solana chart. We'll get into that in just a moment. But some giant news coming out of the Solana camp. Well, Stripe, if you're familiar with Stripe, they are one of the payment apps that, well, it might not be a household name to you, but for small businesses, Stripe is one of the strongest providers of payments for small businesses here in the United States. And so when you go to these little terminals and you just go to register and you tap, there's a good chance you're using Stripe. Now, Stripe here, I do have a video. Well, they're dabbling with crypto. So it's about 2 minutes long, so we'll just play this.
So this is a little preview. Patrick's not the only one who can leak things. This is the Stripe. Check out You Know and Love, and it's got all the cool functionality. Like, again, a big one for us is localization, where it looks different. You see here, depending on where the customer is. So you can see here
they have just a website pulled up, and then you see here on the right side they have crypto on the right side, and then with the little pay tab. And so let's see what happens when they get into this.
This is our confirmation page. We passed in the email address for the checkout. Here we're selecting what chain we want to pay with. We're going to pay with Solana. Here we're selecting, what wallet we want to use. We could use Coinbase Wallet or MetaMask. I'm going to use Phantom for the purposes of this demo. So when I pay here, it's going to bring up some UI from Phantom, which is the crypto wallet that we're using. So this is the Phantom UI here. This is not Stripe UI. And you see here we're confirming, we're going to pay with Solana. The network fee, very cheap, as we discussed, network fees coming down $99. Now, again, you're probably used to a crypto transaction. You're expecting, me to bring out another guest here, and, we'll do a 8-minute conversation while we wait for the transaction to clear. But that is old crypto. You ready for the new crypto world? You have to look very closely and not blink. You ready? Oh, bad tap. That's it. We're done. And
now you would think that was a batch transaction, right? Hey, it just, I hit purchase, boom, it probably got batched. It's on some layer 2, whatever. It'll settle here in a few minutes. But the transaction, as far as through the wallet, said it went through, right? Well, no, it's actually done all on chain.
We're going to now go do something. It has now been posted to the blockchain already. And so if I go into my Phantom wallet here and go into the Explorer, you see here, sent at 9:58 today. We can view on the Solana Explorer. This is, I think the Explorer just loading is on the blockchain. Here we go. This is, so you can go to this URL yourself if you are eagle-eyed and see this is a real...
You can see here, this is all settled on chain layer 1 in a matter of 1 second, a fraction of a second. I don't know, however long it took for him to click buy now, and then it said transaction successful. So you're talking sub 1 second transaction finality settling in real time on the blockchain through a UI that is predominantly used for small businesses here in the United States. And you can just simply say, hey, check out with crypto, and boom, it's all settled in real time. And it's not going through some payment channel that batches it and then settles it later with vulnerability risk. Hey, I want to pay my stable coin, and I want to pay through Solana, and boom, there it is. Speaking of Solana stable coins, I do have here, this just shows maybe it's just smarter to pay with stablecoin through Solana. You have the Visa dashboard shows that Solana has significantly more stablecoin transactions than any other blockchain. Now, perhaps this was short-lived. Perhaps this was just for a brief moment, but nonetheless, transactions here, as posted on the Visa dashboard, shows a significant amount of stablecoin transactions processed through Solana versus the other competitors throughout their Ethereum. Now, lastly, that's actually that's going to end my thesis there. I want to send it over to you, Forrest. I know you are pretty bullish on Solana, particularly their ecosystem and their dApps. Also, we're gonna take a look at some charts here. What is your takeaways on price action and also the bullish narrative as far as integration into small businesses and payments?
Yeah. I think it's very bullish. It's one of the reasons I've been bullish on Solana for so long. It's funny, like that Visa came out and said that they were experimenting with payments all the way back here when I think it was like right there, right before this last local low and Solana's price down at like $19, $20. That's where Visa came out and said, hey, we are looking into Solana for USDC payments. Obviously Stripe doing the same now. It's funny that this news came out. This is old news. I mean, obviously we're seeing them actually give demos, but like we've known that these payment processors have been interested in processing payments on Solana for a while. And that was really one of the big tip-offs where, hey, the fundamentals have changed, but the price has not yet. Now we've seen price really reflect that. Do I think Solana still has significantly more upside? Yes, probably, especially if Bitcoin continues its ascent. I'm by no means bearish on Solana. Are you getting the best prices ever for it here? No, but I do still think that it's relatively early in the grand scheme of things for Solana. What I'm looking for here is simply for Solana to start channeling through here and break out of the top. If we, for whatever reason, break down below like 110, 105, that region, I would say that's, obviously a reason to be, bearish in the short term. Look for additional downside or lower prices. Do keep in mind that Solana has, it's like Solana's run from $17 to $210 in less than a year, to give, 190 days, 6 months, a little over 6 months. So historically, like when you want to buy something is when it's down in the gutter, not after like a massive run up. So while I am bullish on Solana, I don't necessarily think it's the greatest time in the world to be taking a long-term Solana position. I think you should be looking to really get in on big dips like what we recently saw. Mean reversions, if we throw on, 21-day simple moving average, we pretty much saw a mean reversion down here around 117. Obviously a good buying opportunity. So at minimum right now, I'd be looking to buy Solana if it comes back down to that 21-week simple moving average, which would be around 123, 125. I don't know if it will. Kind of bullish on the market for the next 6 months or so. So we'll see if it gives us another buying opportunity there. But otherwise, as just a shorter term trade, I like the idea of just looking for a breakout here, right? A breakout above, call it 150, taking out this prior high after kind of ranging sideways here for a little bit. Alternatively, like I mentioned, if you want to look for a short, I'd say if we start taking out these lows, start breaking and holding below that 21-week simple moving average, below 120, 125, then you could probably see some downside to, maybe 90. And catch a little short opportunity there. But this is really the range I'm looking at, 125 to 150. Break above it, I'm bullish. Break below it, I'm bearish. But long term, I'd be a little bit careful. Like if you're just going to buy Solana and hold it for like a year or two, like Yeah, maybe, but better opportunity was to buy considerably lower. You're buying at almost 10x the price that you could have off of the same news coming out. So look for mean reversions if you want to build those longer term positions. Look for mean reversions. Look for 125 or so as support, and just kind of inch in, get a little bit build those positions slowly and be patient rather than just firing the full clip at a elevated price from where we were at 6 months ago. Yeah, bullish on Solana, bullish on this use case. Really interested to see. Last thing I'll say is I'm really interested to see what the fee structure is for Stripe. I mean, obviously Stripe's going to want to take a cut of all those payments, and we see using the Solana network is very, very cheap. It only costs like a fraction of a penny for as far as fees go. So where does Stripe come in and take their cut? Which that'll be very, very interesting to see what kind of fee structure they roll with there.
I think a lot of their revenue is off of the integration of their hardware as a terminal in businesses. So I know I've worked in some restaurants that have used these point of sale terminals, and a lot of it comes off of that front end hardware, and then using their services to, like, say, troubleshoot and also integrate into like a website. And so I think and I don't know for sure, but I think that someone like Stripe is essentially making their money partnering with businesses and then paying a fee to set up their whole point of sale system. And then something like crypto is just another rail or another avenue for the consumer to pay, and not really the profit side, right? I think they make more money with the partnerships. I could be a little off on that. It might have changed with crypto, but I know historically using these point of sale systems, that's how it generally goes. I want to ask you a question there, Forrest. I know you're pretty bullish on the Solana phone, and I know you had one, if not two, of the original Saga phones. We know that Saga 2 got announced. I don't know if it got rebranded. Oh, there it is. I don't know if it got rebranded, but we know that I have an article here, Solana Mobile Chapter 2. Did it get rebranded to Chapter 2? Because I know it was Saga 2. Either way, the sequel to the Saga phone by Solana had some deposits. It was $450 to hold the deposit for the next phone. Well, they found a way to airdrop the deposits for the pre-order. So pre-order holders of Solana's mobile phone had a brief chance to profit from a yet-to-be-released mobile phone after meme coins airdropped to buyers briefly exceeded the cost of the phone. In April, the teams behind two cat-themed meme coins, Dogs World and Meniki, airdrop tokens to wallet of crypto users who pre-ordered the new phone, which, as I mentioned, cost $450. Phone hasn't even been out yet. Oh, how many airdrops are going to be packaged up with the phone after it drops? I'd say this. For me personally, if you don't have one of these phones yet or a pre-order, I feel like it's kind of foolish not to go pull the trigger on it if you have the chance to. I know Rocco, you said you pre-ordered one, right?
The price is a little different. I mean, it's down 14% now, but
yeah, and on here on this article, it does say briefly had a chance for profit.
There we go. I'm gonna show you very, very quick.
But yeah, you can see there. That's yours, right? Rocco?
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, that's the Saga 2 phone that I ordered.
Well, I mean, at a $450 deposit, coming up $380, even right at this moment, you just paid $70. And you're only down $70 on the full phone deposit. And we know that it's going to be packaged with more airdrops after the release. Forrest, do you have the Saga Phone 2 deposit? Do you have one on pre-order?
No, I just have the original one, the first Saga phone, which is kind of annoying because you would think that the Saga, the OGs would get more airdrops than the Chapter 2s, but some of these meme coins, they're just ignoring the OG Saga, the Saga 1 holders and going straight for the Chapter 2s. And hey, I'll remember that.
Not gonna
But
get
no,
one?
jokes aside, I mean, the airdrops have been decent. The airdrops have been decent. I think, if you're somebody, I wouldn't, go into it thinking like, oh, this phone's going to make me rich or whatever. Maybe you get a super, nice airdrop later on in the bull market that, makes you a couple $1,000s or more. That'd be ideal. But, look, if you're somebody who's in the market for a phone and you don't mind using Android and, like you saw from that phone right there, that like if you paid $450 for the phone and then you sold $375 worth of airdrops, you paid $75 for a smartphone, and a decent one of that. They're not junk phones; they're solid quality Android phones. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense if you're like into crypto and you want a phone that's crypto friendly and you want a phone that ends up not costing a lot of money because you get the airdrops. Go for it.
Also, we were discussing the Solana phone, and it comes preloaded with apps or dApps on the phone. And for someone that might not be quite as savvy or just someone that's kind of going through a rush, it's nice having preloaded apps or dApps on the phone because then you don't have to go worry about, did I click the right link? Am I on the right wallet? Do I, it's already built natively on the phone. Kind of takes that guesswork out of it. Something that I'm pretty bullish on. I did want to pull up, I was kind of going through Twitter here a little bit ago when you were on the charts, and I have this tweet you had here, and I thought it was kind of interesting, and maybe I should have timed this one after the Bitcoin chart. But either way, you came out here and said, I agree. So here's the tweet that you're replying to. My thoughts on why the next 6 months will be relentless up only. And I know you kind of discussed this thesis, but I don't know, man. You sound pretty bullish on the next 6 months. I know you said this already, but do you want to elaborate on here? Because it says on here you won't elaborate, but can you give us a little alpha? Why do you agree ultimately on why this next 6 months is straight up and to the right?
So just have a lot of things kind of converging all at once. So one thing being, I think inflation data is going to come in low next month. And I think that could be the spark. And I think the Fed wants to find an excuse to cut rates. I don't know if they will or they won't. Generally, I think the current administration is going to be looking to prop up the market any way they possibly can going into the election. You don't want to go into the election looking like things are in a recession. So anything they can do to kick the can down the road, going into November, which is around, 6-7 months from now. There's just, generally we're in an election year. We are now post Bitcoin halving. Generally the 6 to 12 months after the Bitcoin halving are like where you see the largest gains. I personally am of the opinion that we've already been a bit more front loaded on that. And I think we'll probably remain front loaded on that. So I think next 6 months is, one of the best time frames in a halving cycle, Bitcoin halving cycle, to be allocated to crypto historically. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen again, but historically being allocated to Bitcoin in the 6 months post halving, or usually, 6 months before, 6 months after, usually a really good idea. And then you also have some interesting patterns with the buying behavior from a year ago, which has implications on tax loss, or not tax loss harvesting, but long-term capital gains. So essentially, a year ago, we were entering this period of time where Bitcoin volume and volatility was very, very, very low. There's not a lot of new buyers coming into the market this time last year, and like for a stretch of 6 months. So you don't really have a lot of entrants into the market a year ago that are going to be looking to sell, their Bitcoin for, those lower long-term capital gains levels over the next 6 months. Whereas, 6 months from now, we'll be entering a time frame where a lot of Bitcoin was being purchased in November, October, November, December, and then particularly in February, right? February, we saw just insane inflows into Bitcoin, tons of new buyers coming into the market. And I think next February, a lot of those buyers from this past February are going to be looking to sell once they hit that long-term capital gains threshold of 1 year. So I just think everything's just kind of aligning right now. And then you just, I'll be happy to change that thesis a little bit if we break down below $59,000 Bitcoin and we fall out of this bull flag and the technicals change a little bit. Then sure, I'll be happy to pivot and I'll have to be a little bit more bearish than I am right now. But I think there's a lot of things just adding up really, really nicely over the next 6 months that just make it attractive to be allocated to Bitcoin and crypto for the next 6 months or so, and to the rest of 2024.
Awesome. I do want to give a channel sponsor shout out though, real quick, before I move on to Ethereum here and a little bit of news there. But big shout out to Cam's Blue Wire Tech. And so we've been renovating the studio, and there's been one company that has been on the other end of the phone with us through the whole process, making sure our network and 4K stream comes to you crystal clear, and that's Cam's Blue Wire Tech. Also, they offer some security services as well for your network. Now, I do want to move over to Ethereum because I prefaced at the beginning of the show that, I was fading Ethereum and leaning more towards Solana. So I gave you my case to why Solana's looking very attractive to me. One, the finality to settlement through third parties that are used predominantly through small businesses here in the States. There's that. There's also Visa coming out and saying, hey, look at the stablecoin transactions on Solana, far exceed any other network. And then you got even the hardware cell phones having they're getting scooped up. And also people are already in the profit there just off a simple pre-order. And Fire Dancer's around the corner as well, right? But, I'm not the only one that feels this way on fading Ethereum. I got some numbers coming in here, and Ethereum, $781 million in outflows in just 7 days. So in the course of a week, we've almost shed $1 billion. And since 2021, hasn't even looked favorable to hold Ethereum versus Bitcoin. And for me, I don't see this trend flipping as far as Bitcoin to ETH anytime soon. The transaction fees are exorbitant on Ethereum. They didn't address that at the base layer in the last upgrade. And the scaling solutions on the ETH layer 2s, they might have gotten a little faster and cheaper there, but it still hasn't fixed the underlying issue. And then there's the discussion of the Ethereum ETF, which hasn't looked very promising. And sources, experts, they're all pointing to the fact that there's a denial looming for the Ethereum ETFs when it comes to the ETF spot market proposal, which I think the final deadline is coming up next month. And which is weird. I was going down memory lane here, and you have, this video. And if you weren't aware, Gary Gensler used to teach a blockchain and crypto course at MIT prior to his current position as the chair of the SEC. And here was his thoughts on Ethereum, situation. Is it a security? Is it a commodity? And here's his opinion.
Vitalik wanted to raise money. He was maybe 19 years old. He looped in with a venture capitalist from Canada, Joe Lubin, who now runs Consensus. Lubin took about 10% or 9.5% of the offering. They put 9.5% in a foundation called the Ethereum Foundation, and the other 80% was sold to the public for $18 million. We'll talk later in the semester as to whether that was really a securities offering. I publicly said I think so, but that was in 2014, and in 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission has said, regardless of what it might have been in 14, it's now sufficiently decentralized that we'll consider it not a security. Vitalik wanted to raise money. He was maybe
So, couple of takeaways here. So, there's the obvious narrative here who says, hey, sufficiently decentralized in 2018, but there's a couple things to take away there. One, not surprised that he says that the sale of the Ethereum token to generate capital for the Ethereum Foundation was likened to a sale of a security. We've heard this already from XRP. They're saying that XRP token itself isn't a security, or at least the court said this, but perhaps the sale of it was. And, you know, that it was there. But there was one piece of information you might have heard there, was that it was generated capital.
19 years old. He looped in with a venture capitalist from Canada, Joe Lubin, who now runs Consensus.
Joe Lubin, who now runs Consensus. And if you've been staying up to date with the headlines this week, Consensus has filed a lawsuit against the SEC for claiming that Ethereum is a security. Very interesting. Yesterday, lawsuit filed, Consensus against the SEC and Gary Gensler, saying that, hey, you're saying that ETH is a security. Obviously, you don't even believe that. And here you have the chair of the SEC saying, well, regardless of what the sale of it was in 2014, in 2018, well, it's not a security. The SEC has said so. And so, you know, is this something that will be used in court? I am no lawyer in this situation, but I would assume if it's permissible in court, this has got to be something you use. You'd be like, look, guys, you're saying that an ETH isn't a security, you know, you're saying that ETH is a security. Here is the head of the SEC saying that it's not. And they also threw my name in there as well. So there you go. So what's your feelings? I don't know if you want to touch on this anymore as far as the video. It's been out for a while. It's nothing new. But what's your kind of feeling on Ethereum? You know, it seems like it's fading. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, like, if I'm the lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but if I'm the lawyer, I think the case just boils down to, like, Your Honor, no take backsies. Like, you can't take back that 2018. Like, they said in 2018, regardless of what happened in 2014, it's sufficiently decentralized now, therefore it's not a security, so it's no big deal. Like, you can't just like flip flop back and forth in over the span of 10 years. It was launched in 2014. There's been sufficient, like, what's the statute of limitations on this? Like, are you really going after something that launched in 2014 when there's been plenty of time to take a look into this? I don't think Ethereum's a security. Personally, I do think that the likelihood of and I get, like, the argument for an ETF approval is simply like BlackRock's track record. Like, they've just not gotten shut down, but they've only had one denial. And I get that, but it's very clear the way the SEC is posturing and going after the Ethereum Foundation and like all of the if nothing else, they could probably now say, oh, well, we've got ongoing court cases around this, you know, being a security or not. We can't approve this, right? So I think that it's pretty likely it'll get denied. But I also think that is where you probably want to buy Ethereum. Basically, if the Ethereum ETF gets denied, I think you'll see a big capitulation. Everyone will call it dead. Everyone will say it's, you know, I don't know how far down in price it'll drop, but I think that'll probably mark the bottom. Similar to, like, you wanted to buy Bitcoin like 2 weeks after FTX collapsed. Right? That was the best time to buy Bitcoin. So usually, like, I don't think Ethereum's going away. I don't think Ethereum is just going to cease to exist. I think it's the second largest cryptocurrency. I think it's going to be around for a long time. I think there's a lot of great use cases. Are the fees high? Sure. Are layer twos a little more centralized than yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, I think Ethereum's going to be around for a while. I think it's going to remain in the top 2 or 3 cryptocurrencies for a long time. So anytime you can take advantage of buying it off of like horrendously bad news and buy it at a significant discount, I think is an opportunity. So I'd be paying close attention to that decision. Yeah. And if we get a denial over the next 2 weeks after that, I think you'll get a good buying opportunity.
I 100% agree with you. And my fading of Ethereum is in the short term. I know I see Julio here in the chat saying, like, how can you fade Ethereum? And it's not that I don't believe in ETH. I just look at it from like, hey, there's a massive opportunity to make money this bull market. We are in the early stages of the bull market, post-halving 6-8 months out, as you mentioned, generally when things really start to ramp up and go parabolic. And I'm just looking at Ethereum as it's not my favorite pick right now. And I think over a longer time horizon, I think that it's still going to hold its market share. Maybe it slows down to some other layer ones, but I don't think that it's going to just fade as a chain and become irrelevant. I think it will be relevant. I just think that in the grand scheme of things, in the bull market that is to come, I feel more value in some of the other layer ones that are getting a little bit more use case and adoption right now. And then I know you mentioned, like, why is Gary Gensler even going after Ethereum? I found here, this is, why go? There's so many crypto projects out here that are just obvious scams, and they're just cherry picking here and there. But a live look at Gary Gensler protecting, quote unquote, as he loves to say, investor protection, protecting all the crypto investors here. You have a live look, Gary Gensler. And so you got Gary here. Well, he's what? There's another one. There's FTX and there's Celsius. Well, you got one. You got Ethereum. He's out of here. So with that said, we're going to end the show there. Gary got one. He got ETH. It's security. So big shout out to our channel sponsors once again, Legacy Network and Cam's Blue Wire Tech as well. We have Legacy Telegram in the chat, bluewiretech.com. Go check them out for your business networking needs. And for that, I'm not going to tornado thing here, whatever David does. I do want to give a big shout out to Forrest. Thank you for joining us. I know that we got you next week joining us, I think, for the majority of the week. So if you're a fan of Forrest, go check out Sistine.ai, which is just done nothing besides hit home runs with his research papers. But go check out Sistine.ai. Also, I'll give you the floor there if there's any parting words, and you'll get more Forrest next week as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on as usual. Bullish on Sin City Crypto. Have been for a long time. You guys are absolutely crushing it. So happy to be a guest on the channel next week. So looking forward to that. Otherwise, guys, enjoy this market. This market's I have a knock on wood. I have a feeling there's good times and bad times ahead, but hopefully the good times are closer. And just good time to be in crypto. Very exciting stuff ahead of us.
Yeah, I feel like it's the calm before the storm, right? And let's not forget, beginning of the year we were at 20-something thousand, right? So now we're over 60,000. We broke all-time highs a couple weeks ago, and it's just a little consolidation before the next leg up in the bull market. And for that, hyper bullish. Make sure you come in and check us out next week. You're going to get more Big Rob, more David, more Rocco, producer on the ones and twos here in the center, and then also more Forrest as well. So until next week, hey, see you.
City Crypto. Everybody know we here for entertainment and info. Gonna show you how to get that big dough. So every day stay tapped in for big facts, no capping. With Bitcoin, if you're in, then you win. We divide the pie with no fraction. It's Big Rob, David. I split the game, but they gave it. Name the coin that's your favorite. I got dry powder, why save it? To the OGs, new beginners. Special shout out to the well members. Buy the dip, sell winners. Ain't really nothing you can tell sinners. Tune in for the latest new flavors. They gonna teach us mean coins. They polarizing like barbecue chicken pizzas. I laugh with a major grin. Laggers, we trade them in. Baddies, they came to sin, and sinners gon' play to win. Screaming, hola, till my bags are flowing over. Hold ya.
All right, I did want to say Monday next week. Monday next week is the last day you'll see this desk. There's only one more show with the desk. It's all y'all over here hating on this thing. I absolutely hate it as well. I'm with you. One more show with the desk, and we got our new one.